So what is your advice for beginners to when they start with being a monastic?
Well, it's like, contemplate the attitude for monastic life, because you're becoming a samana, which means you're giving up your rights. You actually, when you become a bhikkhu, you're a samanera also. You have to live without money and depend on alms, things like this. And we have rights to have money and have an active sex life and go where we want when we feel like it, and so forth. I mean, the whole, when you're living in the Western country and everybody's talking about rights all the time. People always demanding rights, human rights and equal rights and rights. So everybody's thinking about their rights. And then the samana life is about giving up your rights and then performing your duties. So it's a total change from a worldly life where you're thinking of yourself mainly. And the culture in the West now is very much about, equality and rights and all these very high-minded ideas. And a sense of duty is never mentioned, what duty we have. And so that's why when you have to ask 3 times, the ordination procedure, you have to ask 3 times. There's a logic to that in the upasampada, so that, we're assured that you're doing this on your own and nobody's holding a gun to your head or forcing you into it. And you know what you're getting into, you study the Vinaya and things like that, so you know what is, expected in the training procedures and whatnot. Because it's going against the stream of the world. And it's very interesting what happens to your mind, because you can, understand it and even appreciate it. But when you're actually living within restraint and in a structure based on a hierarchical structure, it brings up all kinds of strong emotional reactions. So it's, it's a wonder anyone stays. Because you're going against what you're culturally conditioned to believe is right and good, like human rights. Who can criticize human rights and things like this? It's just, it's a time where freedom of expression, every little ethnic group is demanding their rights now. So the Catalonians want to separate from Spain, and the Welsh are aiming to, the Scots are planning to leave Britain and leave the Great Britain, and all these ethnic groups that were under one general nation are now demanding their rights as separate national entities. It goes on and on like this. I'm not criticizing it, but I'm just trying to point out how, the zeitgeist of the time is one where you really are, this ancient tradition is about anachronism in the present situation of how modern people think. And so this is why, it wouldn't work very well if the point wasn't for liberation from ignorance and suffering. So that's foremost. Always keep that as your, foremost in your mind. The whole point of this life isn't just to hold on to ancient customs and keep Buddhism alive or things like this. It's not about kind of propping up old traditions and things that don't seem to fit into modern attitudes, but it's about training yourself to observe, to be a witness to, the conditioning you have. and it works very well if you're willing to do it. You know, we can't really negotiate our position in the Vinaya. You know, it's based on seniority, and it's a structure, an impersonal structure that the Buddha established. Seniority is terribly impersonal. It's about who ordained first, not who's the best monk or the enlightened master. It's about seniority alone, and then that it doesn't matter about the personal aspect of it, but it will reflect that, you know. So in this life, you have if your role model is somebody like Ajahn Chah, well, he's, you know, for me he was the top. I mean, I had no problem bowing and performing my duties to Luang Por Chah. But then I went to other monasteries where the senior monk I didn't respect very much personally. And then, you know, the conceit of not wanting to do all these things for a monk I didn't respect. But then the whole thing was, no, you're a junior monk, you perform those duties because that's your duty as a junior monk, not about just to monks you respect and like, but to those who are seniors, you do. And so, without that, I wouldn't, you know, I just follow more or less my own personal opinions. If I didn't have something to remind me of and help me to observe my own ditthimana, my own conceits. And so I learned a lot from living in other monasteries where I didn't approve of things, or I didn't particularly respect the senior monk. But I learned about how conceited I am and how full of opinions I am, because these would come up, and they're based on, you know, maybe their Vinaya wasn't very good or things that I could justify. But then, you know, that wasn't the point of me being the kind of one who's judging everything about what's good and what's bad, but performing my duty within the structure. And I found that made life very simple for me all these years, because it's not about me thinking who's worthy and who isn't. It's about who's senior and who's junior. And contemplate that. It's, you know, I get a feeling for a traditional structure, a hierarchical structure based on seniority, because you're from Australia, aren't you? So it's more like an egalitarian society. Everybody's as good as everyone else, and hierarchy is a nasty word. In America, it was a nasty word, hierarchy, and patriarchy. Patriarchy, you can have a good patriarch, you can have a bad patriarch. Patriarchy itself is nothing. It's just a word, a concept. And then it works well if the patriarch is good. You know, the structure is based on virtue and that sila. You know, I found mainly that the structure works. It's a patriarchal form, but it works quite well when the Vinaya is kept, you know, when it's respected. So, but this is to reflect on it. So you're not just operating from a Australian conditioned perceiving tendent habit to waking to more how things really are, you know, since you're using your intelligence to reflect. And then to watch your own feelings about such things. You know, like certain words bring up strong feelings. And like patriarchy could bring up very strong emotion in women. You know, it may not in you, but whatever words, you know, whatever concepts or things that happen to you individually, you know, you can observe how you feel, you know, whether they upset you or you're indifferent or you agree or whatever. Because it's you that observes. The words themselves are just words. I tell the story about living in England during Mrs. Thatcher years as Prime Minister. And she was Prime Minister for about 12 years, a long time, and people hated her, at least people that came down from Bachi. And she was one of these words that would trigger off strong negative emotions. So I'd give these meditation retreats, and at time to do with the metta practice, I'd go around, make it easy at first, around 1 billion Chinese in China, easy. Everybody could do that. And then, those that are far away and you don't know, it's easy to have metta for. And then it comes down to more intimate relations and parents and monks and nuns and so forth. And then I'd say Mrs. Thatcher, and you just feel really free. I hold that, a powerful word, because people intellectually they knew they should have metta for Mrs. Thatcher, but the word itself brought up this strong aversion to her, to that perception. And we all have those, what you call buttons you press, where you push this button and you kind of blow up, where somebody else might not. And reflecting on that is also important to see where you're most vulnerable, where you lose it. Encourage you to just contemplate how to use this form. It's not a form that is based on, you can leave at any time. It's not a matter of, you have to stay, or you have a gun to your head, that, because it's, in Thailand it's very easy to disrobe. They don't have any strong reaction against disrobing. But also it's a restraining form to not to browbeat you or to beat you down into a conforming idiot, but a structure to live in which makes our life workable, where you can reflect on your own karmic tendencies. See them in terms of Dhamma, like old conditions that arise, or all those cease, the rising ceasing of conditions, and because it's through that continuous reflection that you begin to know this in a profound way, not just an intellectual way. And then that which is aware of condition is not a condition. So you're beginning to discern. Awareness puts you in this relationship to conditions, whether they're external, like what you see, hear, smell, taste, touch, or what you're thinking, to, the mental conditioning you have, emotional conditioning. But the awareness is unconditioned. It's a door, the gate to the deathless. So put yourself in that position by mindfulness, and then your relationship to the conditioned phenomena is observing, witnessing, because we have to live in this conditioned realm till we die. So it gives you good opportunity.
What do you have advice to young Teras?
To young?
Young Teras.
Go bend the bar. Just keep observing. Trust yourself to be aware of what even that perception of being a young Tara is. It's just another conventional thing. I remember one monk in Amravati before he was a Tara, he said, he was always critical of Ajahns. And so the word Ajahn became almost, like, I'm not going to be an Ajahn. And so he taught like this until he actually had 10 concerts. And then he became just like, he did all the things that he was criticizing Ajahns for. Because, we get attached to, we're having a hierarchical structure, we get attached to our position in it too. It brings up that sense of, I'm an Ajahn or I'm senior to you. And those are different, that's Sakya Ditti again, holding to these views. The views are okay, but it's the grasping of them out of ignorance. So that's what, avijja is the cause of all suffering, ignorance. And then the realm we live in is a sense realm. We have to live in this state of, continuous sensitivity till we die. The human body and the senses and all this, the world around you, nature, the sun, moon and stars, everything is about conditioned phenomena. So then when you're identified with your body as who you are, then you feel helpless because you're such an insignificant condition on the planet in this vast universe. And around you is this vast kind of vortex of changing conditions, and they're affecting you whether you like it or not. They're impinging it on your consciousness. They appear, rise and cease in consciousness. So consciousness is the only way out of it. Not suicide or anything, but just beginning to recognize, awaken to this simplicity of knowing all conditions are impermanent, and not judging, not being caught in having to judge or prefer, but just be the knower, the observer of the arising, ceasing, and that goes just for subtle mental states in your mind or external conditions that you see here, etc. That's the magic, that's the wonder of it, because you can actually, within this kind of very vulnerable form, awaken to ultimate truth and discern it, know it, and take refuge in it. But when you're attached to your body, then you're in for trouble. Because that, it gets sick and gets old, and then we're living in a society where we have strong views about who's good and who isn't, and so we're very not physically vulnerable, emotionally vulnerable. The world is just like a frightened, fear-ridden place. But in Dhamma, then we can bear with the changing conditions of our own physical form, and we know how to let go of all our emotional habits and views and opinions to abide in this state of awareness before the physical body dies.